Hello, everyone, and welcome to our taster session on mindfulness this morning. So welcome if you're just joining. This is a 1-hour webinar. And my name is Kerry. I'm a tutor for Adult Learning Wales, and I'm going to be running this taster session for you across the next hour. I'm thinking that I may have some Wi-Fi issues this morning in the sense that I think my camera keeps freezing, but hopefully we'll be okay. Hopefully you can hear me. If you are struggling to hear me or if there's any issues from your end, if you could just pop a message in the chat box. So this will run as a webinar session, so you won't necessarily be able to see each other, but you can drop a message to either myself or to Sarah, who's here as the host today from Adult Learning Wales. So if there's any issues with me in terms of you can't hear me, then please just do let us know. But welcome if you're just joining. This is a mindfulness taster session. My name's Kerry, and I'll be running this session for you. So how things are going to work is that this is going to run as a taster session. Now, for any of you who've done mindfulness before, you'll know that it's not sort of super theoretical. It's actually very practice based, and the best way to understand and get an experience of mindfulness is to practice it. So we are going to be having a go of a couple of practices across the taster session this morning. I'll be guiding those practices and I'll be giving you the instructions as to kind of what you can do. But obviously, because this session's been set up as a webinar, I'm not able to see you. So, I mean, that's absolutely fine. You're just going to have to kind of follow along with me. And then at the end of every practice, I will invite you just to reflect on a few things and to use the chat box if you want to. So when you write in the chat box, it can only be seen by myself and I think Sarah as well as the host. The chat can't be seen by anybody else in the session. But it's just a way of getting a little bit of interaction and yeah, just to notice what you noticed by doing the practice. So just want to invite you to do that. Obviously, you don't have to do it, but you'll get a really good understanding or a better understanding of what mindfulness is if you have a go at doing the practices. So I will leave some time at the end for questions, but you can also ask questions as we go along. I'll keep the chat box open and visible to me, and so if you do have any questions or thoughts that come up as we go through the session, then please feel free to type them in there into the chat box and I'll do my best to pick them up. Okay, so let's have a little think about mindfulness. So for anyone who does want to write anything in the chat, when you think about mindfulness, what comes to your mind? What words come to your mind when you think about mindfulness? Please feel free to type your thoughts in the chat box. Are there any images or words or descriptions that come to your mind when you think about mindfulness? Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So Sarah's just popped a note in the chat box as well to say that we can actually enable your microphone if you would prefer to speak rather than type. So do let us know if you'd prefer that. But somebody's just popping in the chat there, in the moment. Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of one of the qualities of mindfulness that we look for, is being in the moment. Somebody else saying peacefulness in the chat there. Thank you very much for your comments. So a real sense of calm, of peacefulness, and absolutely mindfulness can be about cultivating that. It can be about noticing that. It is important to say that sometimes we can be mindful and we can feel awful. You know, we can be mindful of the fact that we're feeling angry or we're feeling upset or we're feeling irritated, and we can still bring a mindful attention or awareness to those emotions, to those feelings. So, but sometimes absolutely we can start to notice that we start to feel more peaceful or we start to feel more calm as we start practicing mindfulness. So great, some really good suggestions there. And I think it's starting to be a word or a phrase or a practice, you know, that we hear about more and more in society. So if you've done mindfulness sessions before, this one will be a little refresher. If you haven't, don't worry, I'm going to start from the beginning, and keep it really practical and really simple. So I came to mindfulness. That's just a bit about me. Yeah, I'm a tutor for adult learning Wales, and I teach a lot of the emotional skills kind of stuff, as well as mental health first aid. And for me, mindfulness is about helping people to navigate life's inevitable storms. So yeah, I came to mindfulness because of a situation like this. Life can really feel a bit stormy sometimes, can't it? And it is really important to remember and recognize that we're not all in the same boat, actually. We all have different resources, we all have different experiences, we all have different needs. And so I don't think it is fair to say that, we're all in the same boat, but we are certainly all in the same storm. And that storm is life, and sometimes the waters are quite calm and we'll feel like our boat is, navigating those waters really well. And other times life can feel like it's thrashing us around. And probably like lots of people, I came to mindfulness because of one of those periods in my life where life was thrashing me around. And I tried a lot of the normal things, and some of those things have been really helpful. But I just kind of had this feeling that I just didn't want to keep fighting with the storm. And the more I was fighting with the storm, the more exhausted I was getting with the fight. And so somebody had said to me, you might want to learn some mindfulness practices, because mindfulness teaches you a different way of dealing with discomfort. So I came to mindfulness about 15 years ago, and I've been practicing it since then, really. And I use lots of different types of practices. One of the things that we're going to look at in today's session is I'm going to show you a little video which busts some mindfulness myths, because there are a lot of myths out there about what mindfulness is. So I'll show you a little 5-minute video just to kind of clarify some of those. But yeah, mindfulness has been really helpful, and I use it in lots of different ways in my life. So I guess sticking with that sort of boat analogy, the purpose of mindfulness is not to to be able to suddenly stop the storm from storming. At the end of the day, the storm is life. It's really to pay attention to our boat. What kind of boat are we in? Does our boat need some repairs? Do we need to put our energies into building a new boat? Or can we look at the boat we've got, and can we make it, can we fortify it more against life storms? So that's what mindfulness is. It's not a silver bullet. It doesn't fix everything that's wrong in our lives, but certainly it's one of those really important well-being tools that helps us through difficult times, as well as, to better appreciate the good times as well. That's really important to say. So I think the easiest way to properly explain like what it is to have an experience of what it is. So I tend to do this so I run a 6-week course on mindfulness, and I tend to do this really, really quickly in my opening session. And it's just called an opening practice. And I'll just pop the slide on so we can see what we're going to be doing. So there's a number of ways to do this, and I would encourage you to adapt and choose a way that best fits your body and how your body's feeling this morning. But in a moment, I'm going to ask you to clap your hands quite firmly together 10 times. Or if that doesn't feel comfortable for you, if you've got pain in your hands or your hands don't feel like they're able to do that this morning, the other option is that you can rub your hands onto your legs. And if the palms of your hands aren't really available to you, then you can rub the backs of your hands onto your legs. But if your palms are available to you this morning, then clapping them together or rubbing them vigorously on your legs 10 times. Okay, so in a moment, we're going to do this together. I'm going to do it with you. And then we're going to see what we notice. All right, so 3, 2, 1. I'll just give you a couple of moments. And now if your hands are in front of you, then just want to invite you just to hold your hands together a couple of inches apart, 5, 6 inches apart like this. If they were rubbed on your legs, just lift your hands up. And see if you can just pay attention to the palms of your hands. And there's no need to close your eyes or kind of breathe in any particular way. Just see if you can notice the palms of your hands. What are you noticing there? Just make a mental note for a moment. What are you noticing? What do you notice? What is your experience in the palms of your hands? Where is your experience? So we're just getting curious about any sensations that we're noticing in the palms of our hands and noticing how those change. Just staying with this experience for a few moments. So maybe you notice some tingling or some pulsing. Maybe the sensation feels like it's all in one particular area, or maybe it moves around. Just staying with those sensations, staying with noticing. So try not to hold your breath, just breathe normally, and then we can just place our hands into our laps. So well done, everyone. So I just want to invite you just to pop some ideas in the chat now. What did you notice in that practice? What did you notice? Yeah, thank you. So somebody saying in the chat there, a warm tingling and then fading. So somebody else saying their hands were tingling and pulsating and they felt alive. Yeah, that's a really interesting description. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Please feel free to anything that comes to mind, please pop it in the chat. And very simply, that was a mindfulness practice. In all honesty, it doesn't matter what you felt or what you didn't feel in your hands. I like to do that practice because it's a way of generating sensation. And exactly as somebody was saying in the chat there, it's a way of noticing that we're alive in a way. It's a way of really noticing that actually we do get a lot of feedback from our bodies quite often. And we can be quite good at sort of overriding those bits of feedback. But when we do a simple exercise like that, we notice sensations that really make us feel alive. Maybe you did that exercise and you just felt like a numbness. I've had people say that before, that they just felt numb, that their hands felt kind of, oddly numb. So numbness is still a sensation. So if you came on a mindfulness course with me, you would hear me talking a lot about sensation. Sensation is the body's way of giving us feedback. So if we think about something at the extreme end of sensation, like pain or discomfort, it's just the body getting our attention. I mean, that's all pain is. That's all discomfort is. It's the body saying, hey, hello, can you pay attention to me, please? So the sensations that we have in our bodies are actually really important because they're our body's way of guiding us towards action. And where we've gone so wrong, I suppose, in our modern lives is that we've just become really, really good at ignoring sensation. So, mindfulness is very, very simply, exactly as you were all doing in that practice there, it's very simply coming into the present moment and being aware of what's there. And notice that it's not coming into the present moment and noticing particular things, right? Noticing how calm we feel or how peaceful we feel or how strong we feel. It's noticing what's there. So this is like one of the myths about mindfulness. One of the myths about mindfulness is that it's about creating serenity or calmness. It isn't about that at all, actually. Sometimes when we're being mindful, we just notice how, as I mentioned at the beginning, how awful we feel. But one of the really, really positive things about mindfulness is that with practice, we do start to be able to create or be able to choose what sensations to follow, to choose what thoughts to proceed with, which then does in turn bring more peacefulness and calmness. So that's something just to be really mindful of, or to be mindful of. It's it isn't about kind of creating those states in and of itself. It's about doing a practice, becoming aware of what's there. And really, really crucially, it's about acceptance, accepting what's there. And in that process of accepting, we start to be able to create more and more of what we want. So this kind of present moment thing, what's that then? How would you describe like the present moment? I know it seems like an odd question, but I think it's quite important just to not make assumptions about this. What exactly is the present moment? Anyone got any thoughts? What's the present moment? What does that even mean? Yeah, thank you. So somebody's saying just listening to the sounds around. So that's a really good example of what we tune into when we go into the present moment. We tune into our senses quite often. So what you've described there is tuning into sounds. So we connect with our auditory sense. And we pay attention using our ears, using our sense of hearing. So that's one really good example. The reason I ask is what the present moment is because when I first started learning about mindfulness, this term was used a lot, and I kind of felt like, oh yeah, no, I get it. I know what they're talking about. But actually, I don't think that I did. I'm just looking at what somebody else has written. Being aware of your surroundings. Yeah, absolutely. So again, tuning into our senses and just picking up on those things, just fine tuning into our senses, because so often we're such sensory beings, but actually, again, we don't often pay attention. Yeah, somebody else saying concentrate on what you're doing, e.g. brushing teeth, and push any other thoughts away. So that's really interesting. Absolutely, it's about focusing on one thing at a time. And it can feel like we need to push other thoughts away, but actually I would say that this is when we get into that struggle, going back to that image of the storm. This is when we feel like we can start directing the weather, when we start thinking that we need to push thoughts away. Actually, it's actually the total opposite of that. We get on with brushing our teeth and we focus on that. And when thoughts come, we just say, yeah, okay, thoughts come, thoughts go. We're not going to be concerned with that. The weather is what the weather is. I'm going to focus on brushing my teeth, or I'm going to focus on navigating my boat through the storm here. So thank you so much. Some really good stuff coming in the chat there. Thanks so much for participating. It does make it so much easier. So this present moment thing. So I remember going to a class and them talking about the present moment, and then me being out with my dog and thinking, yeah, I'm in the present moment. Yeah. I'm walking my dog. I'm in the present moment. And what do you think was happening? I was out walking my dog. What do you think was happening in my mind when I'm out walking my dog and I'm thinking to myself, I'm in the present moment? What was going on in my mind, do you think, as I'm walking my dog? Thinking to myself, I'm in the present moment. What kinds of things do you think were happening? What was my mind doing? Yes, exactly. Being distracted from the present moment. And actually, this is something that's really important to notice. Sometimes we can be, or I say sometimes, quite often, we can be physically present, right? So think about the number of times that you're maybe at the dinner table with your family or your work desk, and you're physically present. So actually, this is an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to notice, like I'm sitting in my home office now, there's so many things I could tune into around me. I could be in the present moment. I could practice mindfulness by tuning into those things. My body is here, but my mind is more often than not worrying about something that's coming up, or rehashing, regurgitating something that's happened in the past. So often in our busy lives, in our modern lives, we are lost in the past, our regrets, our concerns, the things that we think we failed at, the things that we haven't done well, or we're worrying about what's going to come in the future, worrying about plans that we need to make. How are we going to survive? How are we going to pay for this? What so-and-so thinks? You know, even nice things like planning a holiday or planning, you know, to redecorate a room or something. Those things are relatively nice and we want them, but they still take us away from the experience of the present moment. So this is why we need mindfulness in our lives, because we, as humans, this is our experience, right? We have two modes. We have thinking mode and we have sensing mode. So which of those modes do you think that ordinarily we spend the most time in? Which of those modes do you think we spend the greatest amount of time in as humans? Yes, absolutely. Well done, everyone. Right answer, thinking. We are just, sometimes I feel like we're just a mind, you know, on legs. And really our body is a bit incidental, you know, because we've been socialized and conditioned to think. And I'm not saying that thinking isn't good. I mean, thinking is how we solve a lot of problems, isn't it? And it's really helpful to be able to think. But thinking can also, if you're anything like me, can cause a lot of distress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of unnecessary worry and concern. So very simply, mindfulness is a practice to teach us to access a different way of being, because we can shift into a different mode, and it's called sensing mode. Sometimes you'll hear it called feeling mode. So have a look at that image there. What kinds of things could that person be paying attention to get into sensing mode? Look at that image in the bottom of the screen. Imagine that's you and you're having a bit of a walk in that environment. What could that person be paying attention to in order to get into sensing mode? What do you think? Yes, absolutely. Well done, everyone. Brilliant answers. Yeah. Bird song, looking for butterflies, bird singing, plants, trees, feeling of the sun or the breeze on you. Absolutely. This is what sensing mode is. Feeling her feet on the ground and the birds singing. Yes, absolutely. And it's so simple, isn't it? It's so simple. It's so simple that when we think about it, which we've just done, we're able to kind of, when we step back, we're able to go, oh yeah, there's loads of information available to that person. But have you ever been in a situation where you've been in a really, really beautiful setting, could be on the beach, or you've been going through a nice walk? Like I use the example of me walking my dog, because this happens, or used to happen quite a lot, not so much anymore, but used to happen quite a lot. Where you could be in a really, really beautiful surroundings and you're just completely oblivious to it because your mind is full of chatter. Your mind is full, and sometimes it feels like it's so full, it's almost like the thoughts are coming out of your ears. And you can't enjoy those things because your mind is so full. And probably what you've tried in the past is just to say to yourself, oh, stop thinking about that. Oh, stop thinking about that. And you've tried to push it away. And you've probably noticed that it might work for a few moments, a few minutes, maybe even an hour or so. But when we try to push stuff away, what tends to happen? What tends to happen when we try to push stuff away? Just think about your own experience here. Yes, absolutely. They come back. And this is because the brain doesn't understand don't. And we go into this on the 6-week course. We go into the science of why it doesn't work just to push things away. Yeah, thank you. Somebody saying in the chat, their thoughts can still be there and they can actually be magnified, because the psychology behind our thinking tells us actually that the brain doesn't understand don't think about this. So in order to not think about something, we have to first think about it. And that's why it doesn't work. But we go into that. If you're interested in doing the full course, then we go into that in a lot more detail. So really mindfulness and the practice of mindfulness is about teaching us more about how we could be in a lovely environment like that, and how we can experience through our sensing mode all of the things that you've mentioned in the chat there. How do we really, really live a full and meaningful life? Very, very simply. And how do we use our senses and notice the simple things all around us, the beauty all around us? And that's really how we start to really improve our well-being. So very simply then, mindfulness is about shifting gear. So in this course, I mean, this is a slide from my 6-week course. We do practices to shift gears. And we practice a lot shifting from that thinking mode to that sensing mode. And the thing is with mindfulness, right, it's both a mindset and a practice. It's a bit like a muscle. You do have to train it. It's not something that you can just do once and then reap all the benefits. Oops. Hang on, sorry, I just knocked something over. There we go. It's not something that you can just do once and then reap all the benefits for. It's something that you have to practice. And so coming on a mindfulness course gives you those kind of key ingredients, gives you those tools and those techniques to practice. And it's like anything, the more you practice something, the easier it becomes and the better we get at it. And why do we need mindfulness in our modern lives? Well, more often it's because of this, isn't it? It's because stress has really become our modern disease. And the kinds of stress that our ancestors had were very different to the kinds of stresses that we have now. So our ancestors very much needed the fight and flight response. They needed to have their bodies needed to be able to respond to stress because they needed to keep themselves alive. So they were being threatened by saber-toothed tigers or other tribes. And so this fight and flight response, which is often the thing that's being triggered when we feel stressed, is really important to us. It keeps us alive. And we don't want to shut it off. But the problem we've got now is that our modern stressors, the things that cause us stress in our day-to-day lives, are very different to those things that our ancestors had to deal with. So it's things like the weight of responsibility. I don't know how many of you have got caring responsibilities. Maybe you've got children. Maybe you've got elderly parents or relatives that you care for. Relationships. Even good relationships take time, take energy, take effort. Relationships with our partners, with our friends, with our families, with our co-workers. These are stressors. These are things that can cause us to feel the ups and downs of life, to feel the storm of life. And then things to do. Oh, my days. Like how many of us feel like our to-do lists are never ending, and we get that momentary relief from getting to the end of the working week or getting to the end of the day and getting all our chores done. I was just thinking the other day that I felt some momentary satisfaction that I got some stuff done in the garden that I'd been wanting to do for ages, and it was really nice, and I felt that momentary sense of like satisfaction. And because I've been practicing mindfulness for a long time, I really had to just remind myself that, okay, this is really nice. And like, let's just stay with this for a minute. Let's stay with this experience. But more often than not, we do something well. We feel kind of a short period of relief or satisfaction, and then we're on to the next to-do list. And this is our modern life, isn't it? Our modern life is quite a storm. So we need a practice like mindfulness to help us to notice the good in all of these things, but also just to be able to accept the difficult stuff as well. So we're going to have a go of another practice in a minute, but just to say that mindfulness then helps us to better cope with these stressors. It doesn't get rid of them. It doesn't stop things from happening. It doesn't stop bad things from happening, but it just helps us to develop a resilience, I guess, towards these difficulties. So, as I've mentioned already, it's both a practice and it's a mindset. And we learn to become mindful and more mindful in our lives through doing the practices. And what you learn on the 6-week course is how to do the practices and how to access different kinds of practices. you know, lots of you maybe have equated mindfulness with meditation. And meditation is one way of practicing mindfulness, but it's really not the only way. The little exercise that we did at the start there with the clapping, that is a mindfulness practice, but it's not meditation. And we're going to do a little sensory exercise in a moment, which is also a way of practicing mindfulness. But walking, you can practice mindfulness. People quite often practice mindfulness while they're doing yoga. Somebody mentioned brushing their teeth. So we don't always have to meditate in order to practice mindfulness, although meditation can be a part of it. But this is what it can't do, okay? So mindfulness can't, unfortunately, I wish it could, pay our bills, put more hours in the day, get rid of all of the sources of our stress, make your boss, your friend, your partner, your neighbor, or your sister nicer to you. Mindfulness doesn't change other people, but it really changes us and our response to those stressors. And that's the thing that's quite life-changing, really, in my experience. So just a quick summary slide, and then we're going to have a go of another practice. So mindfulness then is about paying attention to the present moment, to things exactly as they are. So it's not about pushing those things away. It's about practicing acceptance. And we're going to have a little look at that in the next half of the session. Because this is really, really key. It's without wishing for things to be different. So sometimes you might be becoming mindful. You might be sitting, maybe you're sitting in your office or sitting at your kitchen table and you're looking out the window and you maybe got a cup of tea. And you're noticing that you feel really sad. And if you're noticing that, then you're being mindful. And, you know, normally we're sort of told, oh, think positively, do something else, distract yourself. And whilst those things can, in certain situations, be helpful to stop us kind of spiraling, actually mindfulness as a practice teaches us to be comfortable with things that are a bit uncomfortable, because it's not comfortable, is it, feeling sad? It's not comfortable feeling angry, feeling let down, feeling deceived. You know, if anyone has been going through any difficult like relationship breakups, or maybe you've lost your job, or you've had a conflict with a family member, these can really evoke all of these difficult feelings in us. Mindfulness teaches us to tolerate those. It teaches us that actually the best thing we can do is not push them away. Allow them to be there. Allow them to be a bit painful. Because, you know, when we allow rather than push, then they dissipate much, much, much quicker. If we push away, push away, push away, they just come back. They come back. They come back. If we say, okay, I'm feeling sad. Yeah, okay. I'm noticing that I'm feeling sad. And I'm noticing where I'm feeling sad. So that's the kind of the next level, really, is to notice, what does sadness feel like? Where are the sensations in the body? This is the way that we start to actually befriend our emotions and befriend our feelings, rather than tell them that they're wrong and that they're bad. So I very, very much speak from experience here. I mean, when I started out practicing mindfulness, I was going through a difficult time with my living situation. I was thinking about, I was living away, I was living in London. I was thinking about wanting to move back to Wales. But I was really conflicted about it. And I was having a lot of like stress and anxiety about that. And mindfulness really just helped me to sort of sit with that and to make a decision about what to do, sort of based on that. And then just recently, I've been going through some other personal traumas in my life. So I very much practice this, you know, I don't just preach it. So I very much practice sitting with difficult feelings and difficult emotions. And it's not pleasant always, but I've certainly learned that it's a much better way to process them than to try and push them away. So we get into all of that on the course. We get into the ways that we push stuff away. So we can push stuff away with alcohol, with drugs, with binge watching, with eating. We can push stuff away with buying things all the time, with compulsively changing things, like constantly cleaning or constantly wanting to change our appearance. You know, these are all strategies that we can tend to have that are strategies to stop us feeling discomfort and to stop us feeling pain. So what we learn on the mindfulness course is, how do we gently become accepting and almost inviting of whatever it is we're feeling. So this is this kind of this idea about allowing things to be exactly as they are, even if they're a bit painful. All right, so let's have a little go. So on the course, we talk about sensations as being on a bit of a trajectory. Okay, so if you can imagine, like there being a long line of different sensations. So sensations vary, don't they, in their intensity, and they also vary in terms of whether they feel pleasant or unpleasant. So think for a moment before we do this practice. Pop a few ideas of what you would describe, an example of what you would describe a pleasant sensation as being. So if I said to you, name a pleasant sensation, what would you come up with? Just think about that. What would you describe as being a pleasant sensation? Pop something in the chat for me. What's an example of a pleasant sensation? Laughter. Yeah, that's a nice one. That's a nice one. So when we're laughing, that feels really pleasant to us. We might get a sense of warmth or tingling, or, you know, there may be all kinds of things associated with that, but generally that's something that's pleasant for us. Yeah, thank you. Smiling and receiving smiles back. So when we feel when we feel connected to somebody else. A hug. Yeah, lovely. So drop into the sensations in the body. So let's just take a hug, for example. When you get a hug, why does that feel nice? Where does it feel nice? See if you can break it down. It is nice to get a hug. See if you can just get into the body for a moment and see if you can think about, we're using thinking, we're not using sensing for this, but it's a good place to start. Like, where does it feel nice? Where do you notice it in the body when you have a hug? It's not something we often think about, so it can take a while to begin to notice these things everywhere. Yeah. So for me, for example, if I think about having a hug, it can feel warm. It can feel comforting. Where do I tend to feel that comfort and that warmth? Probably in my stomach. I feel a lot of things in my stomach. So if I feel anxious, if I feel upset, if I feel angry, often starts in my stomach. So a warm, settled feeling. Somebody's saying in my head and in my heart. It de-stresses straight away. Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of science behind why that is, why contact is quite important for us as humans. You know, that sort of human to human contact is so important. That's why a lot of people struggled so much during COVID. They just couldn't like physically connect with another human. Okay, so let's go to the other end of the spectrum or the trajectory. What would you describe as being an unpleasant sensation? What would be an example of an unpleasant sensation? It's a bit easier maybe to think about unpleasant sensations, but what would be an example? What would be an example of an unpleasant sensation? So something that we feel or notice in the body that we don't like. Yeah, when someone's shouting at you, panic. Yeah, absolutely. Sadness, grief, pain, absolutely. And those things are, just to pick up on that one, sadness, grief, and pain. So I run another course on emotions, on emotional awareness, because I think quite often it's linked to pushing away difficult thoughts. We tend to push away difficult emotions as well, don't we? But sadness, grief, and pain, maybe, they are pain as well. They're all normal, very, very, very normal human emotions, and they're normal human responses to situations, but they're just difficult, aren't they? They're uncomfortable, they're unpleasant. Feeling sad is unpleasant. Feeling grief, gosh, yeah, it can almost feel like our insides are in a washing machine. So what mindfulness tries to do is, and we start really, really small. So we start at this end of the trajectory rather than pain and grief and the really, really strong emotions. But we start to notice the pleasant and the unpleasant. Notice when things are a little bit unpleasant. And we just start to be able to work to build up our tolerance to the things that are really, really, really difficult. Yeah, thank you. Loneliness. Yeah, absolutely. That is an incredibly difficult experience and an incredibly unpleasant sensation. So we kind of get the picture here, but mindfulness teaches us to kind of accept those emotions, not push them away, to accept them, and in accepting them, to sort of transmute them, to enable them to lose their grip. Okay, so I've done lots of talking. I do want us to do this next practice, and then we will also finish with more of a meditation style practice. But this next one is a mindfulness practice. It's not a meditation. You don't have to close your eyes unless you want to. We're going to have a practice of that skill of noticing sensation. And the sensation that we notice may be pleasant for you, or it might be a bit unpleasant. So when things tickle or when they're a little bit irritating, that is on the trajectory towards unpleasant. Okay, so we're going to see if we can notice that. So just get yourselves comfortable. If you sat in a chair, just maybe, get comfortable in your chair. You don't have to sit in a particular way. You don't have to sit with your legs crossed or, with your eyes closed. You don't have to sit like a pretzel. Just be comfortable. And then you're very welcome to keep your eyes open, or if it helps you to focus, just close down the eyes. I'll keep my eyes open for this one. But what we're going to do is just in the same way that when we did the hand clapping, when we paid attention to the sensations in our hands, we're just going to breathe in and out of our nostrils. And we're going to see if we can bring the focus of our attention to the tips of the nostrils. So just breathe normally, no need to hold the breath or to move the breath in a particular way. So we're just doing an intentional mindfulness practice here, bringing the attention to the tips of the nostrils. And really noticing the flow of air coming in and out of the nostrils. Noticing the air on the way in. And noticing the air on the way out. And seeing if we can just bring our attention to the sensations that are occurring at the tips of the nostrils. And maybe you notice the little hairs in the inside of your nostrils moving as the air brushes past them. Maybe you notice the air coming into contact with the skin on the tips of your nostrils. Seeing if you could notice anything about the temperature. So maybe the air feeling slightly cooler on the way in. Slightly warmer on the way out as it's been warmed by the body. And whatever it is we're noticing, whether it feels pleasant or unpleasant, we're going to stay with it just for a few more moments, just continuing to breathe. Just staying with those sensations, keeping the focus of our attention on the ends of the nostrils, on the tips of the nostrils. Just breathing at our own pace. And then when you're ready, you can just start to let that practice go. Okay. Well done, everyone. That was another mindfulness practice. So what did you notice? What did you notice about the sensations at the tips of your nostril? What did you notice about the ear? What did you notice about your focusing skills? Were you able to focus? Just pop a few words in the chat for me. Sometimes with that exercise, we can, a bit like the hand clapping exercise, it's a nice one because it's quite easy to notice some sensation. Yeah, okay. Somebody noticed a rush of air coming in and it being smoother going out. Somebody noticed warmth and after a while a tickle and found this quite difficult. Yeah, absolutely. So if you found it difficult, that's completely normal, because tickling is something that we tend to move away from, isn't it? It's something that we tend to push away from. And also just paying attention in quite an intense way to a small area of our body is very difficult. We were practicing really quite advanced focusing skills then. So if you found it difficult or if you've noticed that your mind was wandering, that is entirely normal. So what we learn in mindfulness is to deal with that, to deal with the mind wandering, to deal with kind of how we put something in place and how we just build our tolerance to these things. Well done, everyone. Really, really, really good work today. All right, so coming to the end of the session now. So something that you could try outside of this session is think about something that you really paid attention to. What was it like? How did it feel? What did you notice? So people often give examples of things like noticing a rainbow, or noticing a really lovely sunset. Or I was at a friend's house yesterday and I was walking through their garden and I walked past this bush with these beautiful little delicate yellow flowers. I'm actually not sure what the flowers were. I walked past, and as I walked past, just got this real burst of scent to the point where I was like, oh, wow, it stopped me in my tracks. And I just turned and I like inhaled the scent for a couple of moments. So there are lots of times in our days where we really pay attention to something. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a garden and maybe you've got birds in the garden or things are flowering, now's a lovely time to notice that, to stand intentionally just for a few moments every day and just look out the window and just notice the colors, notice the textures, notice the sounds. If we do that, then we're practicing this skill of mindfulness. So what it really does is teaches us to directly experience something. Remember that changing gear, you know, when we did that practice, that focusing practice with the nostrils, we were in sensing mode. And if it felt uncomfortable or difficult or a bit tricky, it's just because we're not very practiced at it. And the more you do mindfulness, the easier it gets to shift gears. So I'd just like to finish today then, before I leave a couple of minutes for questions, with a short meditation practice. So mindfulness is so much more than meditation, but one of the tools available to us, one of the mindfulness tools available to us is meditation. So on the 6-week course that I teach, we do meditations, but we don't just do meditations. But meditation is a way that we can really, really practice and hone that focusing skill. So we're going to have a go of just a really short 5-minute practice today. And I will invite you to close your eyes and to get into more of a meditation sort of posture. So have a go with this. Have a go of this with me now if you want to. So it depends on where you are today, but if it's possible for you to slip your shoes off and to connect your feet with the floor, that would be a really good thing to have a go at. That's not available to all of us because maybe it's not possible for us to slip our shoes off if we've got boots on or something, or maybe we're not in an environment where that's okay. Maybe putting our feet onto the floor is not accessible to us for whatever reason. So option instead to rest the hands palms down on the lap. That's equally fine. So feet flat on the floor or hands flat on the lap. So what we're going to just drop into in this last few minute practice is an experience of contact. So we're going to sense touch. Okay, one of our senses is touch, and we're really going to notice that. So we're going to do a mindfulness-based meditation practice. So I really want to invite you to get comfortable. So get yourself into a posture where you're comfortable, where your feet are flat on the floor if possible, or if not, your hands are just flat in your lap. So just want to invite you to close down the eyes just to see what this feels like for you, and you can contrast it with what it was like with the eyes open in the earlier practices. So to begin with then, just want to invite you to notice the weight of the body. So just notice how the body is heavy upon the surface that supports it. So if you're sitting in a chair, or maybe you're on the sofa, or maybe you're on the floor, there's a surface beneath you that supports you. So just noticing that support for the body. So often in life, we feel unsupported. We feel like we're on our own. But actually, when we do this kind of practice, we notice that we are actually always supported. So it could be the chair that supports you today, or it could be the floor that supports you. Really noticing the way that the body becomes heavy and can really lean into that support. We don't have to ask for it, it's already there. We're already being supported right in this moment. And just enjoy that support for a few moments. Just really lean into it. Lean into the pleasant feeling and sensation of being supported. And you might even say to yourself silently, if you want to, and if this works for you, I am supported. I feel myself supported. I know I am always supported. And feel free to choose one of those phrases and just to gently, silently repeat that to yourself a few times. Otherwise, just feel into that support. Feel the feet connecting with the floor. Feel the support of the floor. Feel the hands, if they're in the lap, being supported by the legs. And just make sure that you're breathing normally. You don't need to do anything particular with the breath in this practice. Just important not to hold the breath, just to allow the breath to flow naturally and normally. As you really sense the support that you're currently experiencing in this present moment. I am supported. I know I'm supported. I feel the support of my body. Okay, and when you're ready now, we can just start to let go of this short practice. So maybe a way to do that is just to start to bring a little bit of movement to the body, fingers and toes, hands. Stretch the legs if that's available to you. If the eyes are closed, then just blink open the eyes. And come back to the screen, come back to the session. Well done, everyone. So hopefully that was a pleasant experience for you. If you found it difficult to focus, if you found your mind was wandering, that is really normal, particularly when you start doing mindfulness practice. And what you learn through learning the techniques on the course is you learn how to deal with that, how to deal with your mind in those moments. But do know that if you found it difficult to concentrate at any time today, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that, and actually, if you were aware of it, you were being totally mindful. It's just something that comes with a bit of practice. Okay, so we've come to the end of the session. I've just left 2 minutes for questions, so not loads of time, but I think today's session is really about experiencing it. That's the best way really to have an understanding of mindfulness, or to get a taster of mindfulness, is really to experience it. So I'll stop sharing. And if you do have any questions, then please feel free to pop them in the chat, and I'll do my very best to answer them. Otherwise, if you need to get on with your day, that's completely fine. Thank you very much for coming along this morning, and I hope it was helpful for you. I hope that you were able to have a go of the practices. Yeah, and I hope you got something from the session. So I'll hang around for a few minutes just to see if there are any questions or comments. Otherwise, have a lovely day. Oh, thank you for the feedback in the chat there. That's great. I'm glad it was helpful for you. Oh, that's great. Thanks so much for the comment there. Yeah, absolutely. You can pass these ideas on. Honestly, there's so much material available now. So if you came along today to give some support to somebody else, then these techniques, these ideas, you can get loads of practices on YouTube, just freely available on loads of different places, actually. Insight Timer is quite a good resource as well for free meditations, that guided practices, but there is such a raft of different practices available now, so much that you can access for free. Oh, no problem. Thanks very much. So if you have any questions at all for us at Adult Learning Wales, about this or any other session, then you just can get in touch. But yeah, we just really encourage you to find a way to put a little bit of mindfulness into your daily life. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to sit there with your legs crossed like a pretzel for 20 minutes, and focus your mind. It's moment by moment, minute by minute. That's really the best way of doing it. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. I don't see any particular questions, so I am going to ask Sarah to end the session now. But if you did have anything, then do get in touch with us, and we would be happy to help in the future.